It began with a whisper, soft like wind rustling through lace curtains, barely noticeable against the hum of the baby monitor. New mother Amara should have dismissed it, blamed sleep deprivation or the creaks of their old countryside home. But something about that whisper rooted itself in her bones, called her name, and it came from the nursery. Amara and her husband, Daniel, had moved into the inherited house just 2 weeks before their daughter was born. The estate had belonged to Daniel's late aunt, a quiet woman who'd lived alone for most of her life and was rumored to have been a midwife, though few in the village remembered much about her. The home, perched at the edge of a forgotten forest, was old but sturdy, with tall windows and ivy-covered bricks that seemed to trap shadows even at midday. Amara had loved its rustic charm at first. That changed the night she gave birth. They'd planned to name their daughter Lilith, a name Amara had adored for years. Elegant, strong, timeless. But as she lay in her hospital bed, holding her swaddled baby for the first time, an overwhelming dread crawled over her like a storm cloud. Her mouth went dry. The name felt wrong. Not just wrong, dangerous. As if speaking it aloud would summon something ancient and cruel. I think we should name her something else, she whispered to Daniel, her voice trembling. He furrowed his brow. What do you mean? You loved that name. I don't anymore. Please, call her Eliza. Daniel had hesitated, sensing her panic, but relented. They filled out the birth certificate with the name Eliza May Harper, and never spoke of Lilith again. Not for weeks. Not until the whisper returned. It was around 3 a.m. when Amara woke to the sound, a gentle hiss like someone exhaling through clenched teeth. At first she thought it was Eliza stirring. She checked the baby monitor, but the screen showed her daughter sleeping soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythm. Then came the whisper again. Lilith. Amara sat upright in bed, heart racing. The monitor glitched for a moment, flickering with static before returning to normal. She stared at the screen, now certain she had heard it. The whisper hadn't come from the hallway or her imagination. It had come from inside the nursery. She woke Daniel, who groaned and turned away. I heard something. Voice. It said. She paused, afraid to say the name. What? Eliza crying again. No, said Lilith. That got his attention. Daniel sat up, rubbing his eyes. You're just exhausted. It's probably a dream. She's fine. But Amara didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning she tried to ignore it. She told herself it was just a glitch in the monitor or a product of postpartum stress. But the tension in the house thickened. Doors creaked open by themselves. Cold drafts curled under the nursery door no matter how tightly they shut the windows. Eliza's crib, once a haven of safety, now felt like a stage watched by unseen eyes. And then Eliza began to cry. Not the hungry, fussy kind of cry, but shrill, inconsolable wails that came like clockwork at 3:15 a.m. every night. She would thrash in her crib, eyes wide, not recognizing her mother, as if something older and vaster had stolen into her dreams. Rocking her did nothing. Singing lullabies only made it worse. But one night, in desperation, Amara whispered the name she had sworn never to use. Shoo! It's okay, Lilith. Instantly Eliza stopped crying. Her tiny body stilled. She stared up at Amara with eyes far too alert, as if understanding the word. No, the name. And then she smiled. Amara dropped the bottle in her hand. From that night forward, it became a battle of names. During the day, Eliza was her bright, laughing baby. Calm, curious, everything a new mother could hope for. But at night the house changed. Whispers returned. The baby would only respond to the name Lilith. And Amara, against every instinct, started using it more and more, just to keep the crying away. Just to sleep. Daniel noticed the shift. Why are you calling her Lilith again? He asked one morning, brushing toast crumbs from his shirt. I don't know. It's like she prefers it. She listens when I say it. She's a baby, Amara. She doesn't know what she prefers. But she did. Amara knew it deep in her marrow. Then the drawings began. One evening, Amara found a series of strange symbols carved into the back of Eliza's crib. Not drawn, carved, as if scratched by fingernails or a sharp object. She called Daniel in, but by the time he arrived, the symbols had vanished. Just smooth wood, no sign of tampering. "You need rest," he said, concern etched into his face. "You're seeing things." Amara wanted to believe him. But the next night she dreamed of fire and screaming. A woman's voice echoed in her ears, chanting something in a language she didn't understand. She woke up drenched in sweat, convinced someone had been whispering in her ear. The dream stayed with her. So did the feeling that Lilith, no Eliza, was not alone in her crib at night. Something had claimed the name, wrapped itself around it like a serpent. And by using that name again, Amara had unknowingly invited it back. Desperate for answers, she visited the village library the next day. In a dusty corner of the folklore section, she found a tattered journal titled, "The Curse of the Hidden Name." It spoke of an ancient belief. Names held power. To name a child was to bind them, shield them from unseen forces. But calling them by the wrong name, especially one marked by past bloodshed or forgotten rites, could awaken curses that lay dormant in shadows. One passage caught her eye. To change the name is to bury the past. But should the tongue remember what the heart has sealed, the door will open once more. Amara closed the book with trembling fingers. She had opened the door. That night she tried to resist. She refused to call her daughter anything but Eliza. But the baby cried louder than ever before, writhing in her crib as if her tiny bones were on fire. The windows rattled. The mobile above her crib spun violently though the air was still. Daniel ran into the nursery, stunned by the cold air radiating from within. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted over the baby's screams. "I don't know. She won't stop." Daniel grabbed the baby and rocked her, but nothing worked. Then, through clenched teeth, Amara whispered, "Lilith." Silence. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "I told you," she said, tears filling her eyes. "It's the name. It's cursed." That night they fought. Daniel insisted they see a doctor, a therapist, anyone. But Amara knew what she had to do. She returned to the journal. In the final chapter, scrawled hastily in ink that had faded with time, it mentioned a ritual. A way to bind the original name, to bury it once and for all. But it came with a warning. The name must be forgotten completely, by all who have spoken it, lest it find a way back. Amara sat beside Eliza's crib in the dark, staring at her sleeping child. Could she really forget the name? Could she erase it from her mind, and Daniel's? And what would happen if she didn't? The answer came as a whisper. Not in her ears this time, but directly in her thoughts. Too late. Outside the window, the trees bent backward, as though something massive moved through the forest, coming closer. Amara didn't sleep after the whisper returned. Not really. She drifted in and out of shallow dreams laced with fire and rot, waking every few minutes to stare at the baby monitor and pray the name didn't escape her lips again. But it was already too late. The curse wasn't something that waited for permission. It only needed a memory. And Amara remembered. That morning, Daniel left for work in silence, still shaken by the night's chaos. Amara almost begged him to stay, to not leave her alone with their daughter. But she knew he wouldn't believe her. Not yet. Not until it touched him too. Left alone, Amara clutched the old journal she'd found at the village library and combed through the faded pages again, desperate for something she might have missed. Clue. A warning. Way out. Buried in a torn corner was a scribbled line that hadn't caught her attention before. The name will root itself where it first took breath. Bury it in silence, or the earth will speak it again. She read the line over and over. Where it first took breath. The nursery. She stared at the room now, with its pale blue wallpaper and hanging stars. On the surface, it looked like any other baby's room. But something beneath it pulsed with tension, like the floorboards were holding their breath. And then she remembered. When they'd moved in, she'd briefly pulled up the floorboards to inspect the wood beneath the crib. She recalled seeing deep scratches like claw marks, but had dismissed them as damage from old furniture. Now she wasn't so sure. Amara waited until Eliza napped, then pried up the same section of the floor with a crowbar from the shed. Dust plumed into the air as the board creaked loose. And beneath it, wrapped in yellowed linen and tied with black twine, was something bundled and rotten. Her stomach twisted. She hesitated, then peeled the cloth back with trembling fingers. Inside was an old handmade doll, stitched from what looked like animal hide. Its face was a disturbing mockery of a child, with buttons for eyes and a sewn mouth pulled into a silent scream. Around its neck hung a rusted copper tag, etched with a single name, Lilith. Amara jerked back, letting out a strangled cry. The air around her grew thick and cold. The shadows on the walls stretched unnaturally long, and the monitor in the corner crackled. From the crib, Eliza began to stir. The baby monitor glitched again, and through the static came the voice, a child's whisper layered with something older, deeper, like stone grinding against stone. "You remembered me." Amara shoved the doll back into the hole and nailed the board shut in a frenzy. But the damage was done. That night, Eliza wouldn't sleep at all. She sat upright in her crib, her gaze fixed on the far corner of the room. Her tiny mouth began to move, forming syllables that no infant should be capable of. Amara leaned in, thinking she was cooing. But the sound that came out chilled her marrow. "I remember what you took from me," the baby whispered. Amara fell back, heart hammering. "Eliza," he choked out. "What did you say?" The baby's face contorted into something far too old for her size. Not a smile, but a knowing smirk. Daniel didn't come home that night. His phone went straight to voicemail. Amara called the hospital, his office, even the gas station on the way home. No one had seen him since morning. At 3:15 a.m. the house shook. Not just creaked or settled, but shook, as if something beneath it was waking up. Amara grabbed Eliza and ran down the stairs, only to find the front door wide open. The wind outside screamed like a chorus of the damned, though the trees remained still. On the threshold was a single object, Daniel's wedding ring. It was soaked in blood. Amara stood frozen, unable to breathe. Behind her, the baby laughed. The next day, Amara drove straight to the village's oldest church. Father Corwin, a stooped man with tired eyes, was the only one willing to speak with her. "I need to know about the name," she said, holding Eliza tightly to her chest. "Lilith. Do you know what it means?" Corwin went pale. "You shouldn't say it," he whispered, glancing around the empty chapel. "Not here. Not anywhere." "I already did," she said. "Too many times." Corwin sighed, motioning her to follow him into the back library. He pulled out an ancient volume from a locked cabinet. The leather cover was brittle, and the pages smelled of soot and old secrets. Lilith was not just a name. In some traditions, she was Adam's first wife. Cast out. Rejected. She became a symbol of vengeance, mother of stillborns, stealer of names. In others, she is something worse. A spirit that attaches to forgotten children, those not properly named. She needs a name to live. But she cannot make one for herself. So she waits until it is given, and then takes. Amara felt her blood run cold. "I gave her the name. Then I took it back. She's punishing you for that. You gave her form, breath, identity, then denied her. So she rooted herself in your child." Amara's grip on Eliza tightened. The baby was quiet now, eyes closed. But the priest's words echoed in her skull. "She's not my child, is she?" she whispered. Corwin didn't answer. "I need to stop it," she said, her voice firming. "There's a ritual. Something about forgetting the name completely." The priest nodded. "Yes. The empty cradle rite. But it's dangerous. You'll have to cut the name from your memory, Daniel's memory. Even your daughter's. If anyone remembers, she'll find her way back." "I'm ready," Amara said. But that was a lie. She didn't feel ready. He felt hollow. The rite required fire, earth, silence, and blood. That night, Amara gathered the ingredients from the priest's instructions. She made a small pyre in the backyard and placed the doll at its center. She surrounded it with salt and ash, then pricked her finger and let the blood drip onto the copper name tag. Eliza watched from the back porch, eerily silent. Amara chanted the words. By earth and breath, by root and sky, I name you not. I speak you not. I bury you in forgetting. You are unspoken. You are unborn. You are nothing. The wind howled. The fire rose high, swallowing the doll in a sudden burst of white heat. Amara turned to look at her child. Eliza, she whispered. That's your name. That's always been your name. But Eliza tilted her head, then blinked, and said in a voice no longer hers, Then why do you still remember me? The fire behind Amara extinguished in an instant. She gasped. The name was still in her head, echoing like a heartbeat. Lilith, Lilith, Lilith. She clutched her head and screamed. From inside the house, the baby monitor crackled back to life. The voice returned. You can't forget me, because I'm still inside her. Amara sat in the nursery, staring at Eliza, or the thing inside her. The room smelled of scorched fabric and copper. Outside, the wind had died, but inside, something colder lingered in the corners. Shadows hunched unnaturally, watching, whispering. Eliza lay in her crib, eyes wide open, unblinking. Her lips occasionally twitched into something that resembled a smile, but it was more like a mask, a puppet mimicking human expression. Amara hadn't slept since the failed ritual. Her body was breaking down. No appetite, no sense of time, only dread curling beneath her skin. She knew the name. Will. Despite everything. It hadn't left her mind. And the voice, it wasn't just in the monitor anymore. It was in her dreams. In the pipes. In the walls. Say it again and I'll take what's left. That morning, Amara made another trip to the church. But when she arrived, she found the doors shattered inward, the altar scorched black, and Father Corwin slumped against the stained glass window. His eyes burned out, mouth gaping in a silent scream. In blood across the wall was a single word. Forgot. Amara stumbled backward, screaming. The entity was spreading. It wasn't enough to haunt her child. It wanted every soul that tried to undo its erasure. Every person who once dared to forget. There was no sanctuary now. No help. No priest. No Daniel. And perhaps worst of all, Eliza was vanishing. The real Eliza. Each passing hour, the baby inside that crib moved less like a child and more like something watching her through a child's face. The coos had stopped. The crying too. Now she simply sat. And smiled. Amara made one final decision. She would run. Not away but back. Back to where it began. The village records office had been shuttered for years, but Amara still had the key from her internship long ago. She broke in just after midnight, Eliza strapped to her chest in a carrier, bundled tightly. The child hadn't blinked once on the drive over. The smell of mildew and old paper filled the building, and the fluorescent lights flickered weakly overhead. She found the old filing cabinets in the basement, floor-to-ceiling drawers of forgotten names and histories. She was looking for the birth records of 1971, the year the journal had been written. The drawer creaked open, and her fingers flew across the faded index cards. The last page. Unnamed child. Female infant. Born still. Mother deceased in labor. Father unknown. No name given. Notes. Burial requested privately by midwife. Amara took a photo of the page. Beside it was another card. Oddly more recent. Same surname. Same birth date. But this one had a name scratched in later by hand. Lilith retrieved. The penmanship matched the journal. The name had been stolen back. This wasn't just a forgotten spirit. It was a name desperate to live. If Amara ever forgot the reason she changed Eliza's name, if she let her guard down even once, the entity would slide in and wear her child like a skin. It already had one foot in the door. She had to remember. Home, Amara tore down the nursery. She stripped the walls of the blue wallpaper, burned the hanging mobile, and smashed the crib. She painted the room pure white, sealed the monitor in a concrete box, and placed it in the shed. But none of it helped. That night, she awoke to find Eliza standing in the hallway, alone. Not crying. Not afraid. Just standing. Her shadow didn't match her body. Stretched too tall. Too thin. Amara whispered, "Eliza." The child turned slowly. Her eyes gleamed in the darkness. "She's almost gone now," the girl whispered. Amara's breath caught. "You're not her," she said. The girl tilted her head. "I was never her. You named me. Then you took it back. I want it again. Give it to me." Amara stumbled backward, nearly falling down the stairs. But before she could move, the child leapt, not with a toddler's clumsy gait, but with the fluid grace of something ancient. Amara screamed. The weight of the child struck her, knocked her down hard. She clawed and kicked, trying not to harm her daughter, but what grabbed at her wasn't soft skin. It was rough, bark-like, ancient. This was no longer her baby. In a desperate moment, she screamed a name. Not Eliza, but the name from the card. Lilith. The figure stopped mid-swipe. The hallway went silent. Then laughter. Not from the child, but from the house itself. The walls shuddered, groaned. The floorboards curled like peeling skin. The ceiling blackened. And the girl's eyes turned pitch black. "You remembered," the entity whispered. "Now you're mine again." Amara tried to run, but the house closed in. Literally. The doors vanished. The windows went black. The lights snapped out one by one. And from the nursery, the monitor, sealed in concrete, began to crackle. "Come see the cradle, Mommy. It's empty now." Amara was trapped. Days passed, or maybe only hours. Time didn't flow normally in that place anymore. The house had become something else. Cocoon. A memory womb. Each room replayed visions of her baby's real birth, her whispered name change, the nurse's look of confusion. "You called her Eliza," the nurse had said. "But yesterday you wrote Lilith." Amara had forgotten she'd slipped. And that single slip had been enough. The curse didn't need to be chanted. It needed to be remembered. Now, with Daniel gone, the priest dead, and her memory crumbling, Amara knew the entity had nearly won. But nearly wasn't enough. There was one last thing she could do. She went to the nursery. The crib was back, pristine, white and freshly made. Inside was the doll again. But this time it was pulsing, breathing. Amara picked it up and held it close. "You want the name," she whispered. "Then take it from me." And with shaking hands, she stabbed the scissors into her own temple. When Amara awoke in the hospital 2 days later, the doctor said she'd suffered a psychotic break and performed a self-inflicted lobotomy. She didn't remember her name, or her husband, or her baby. She couldn't even speak. But they found a child in her home, healthy, untouched, silent. The name on the child's tag. Liza. Not Lilith. Never Lilith. But deep in the recesses of Amara's ruined mind, one final memory remained. Not a word. A whisper. A giggle. A voice saying, "Now that you've truly forgotten, I can begin again." The facility was white and sterile, the walls lined with soft padding and silent cameras. Nurses moved like ghosts, eyes flicking with unease toward room 217 every time they passed. Inside, Amara sat motionless, her eyes wide, lips slightly parted, drool tracing her chin. Her hands trembled, occasionally twitching as if trying to shape words she no longer remembered how to speak. To the world, she was just another broken woman. But to those who had seen what was found in her home, the scrawled symbols on the nursery ceiling, the burned crib legs, and the child sitting perfectly still amid it all, she was a mystery no one wanted to touch. The child was placed with a foster family after an extensive psychological review. No known relatives. No birth certificate. Just a hospital ID bracelet with Eliza written on it in faint ink. But every now and then, in the stillness of her new home, the little girl would sit by the mirror, tilt her head and whisper, "My name isn't Eliza. You forgot." 6 months passed. The foster parents, Helen and James, loved children. They had raised 4 of their own before tragedy struck. Their youngest drowned in a neighbor's pool. When the agency offered them Eliza, they saw it as a sign, a chance to fill the void. "She's quiet," Helen told friends. "Polite. Never cries. It's like she's already been through more than most kids ever will." They decorated her room with pink stars, gave her new toys, took her to Sunday school. But Eliza never played. Never spoke. Not until the first whisper. Started with James. He was in the basement, fixing the old boiler when he heard it. A child's voice echoing behind him in the pipes. "Say it, please. Just once." He spun around. Nothing. A week later, he began forgetting words. Small things. The names of tools. The word for hammer. The name of his own dog. Helen thought it was stress. But then he forgot his wife's name. He called her mother without realizing. One night, Helen found him sitting on the edge of Eliza's bed, staring into her face. "James?" she asked. He didn't move. "She asked me to say her name," he murmured. "I think. I almost remembered." Helen told him to leave the room. He didn't argue. That night, James walked out of the house barefoot and was never seen again. Helen was shattered. Alone now, with a child who watched her every move. The mirrors in the house began to darken around the edges, like something wet was rotting behind the glass. Helen took them all down except one, the one Eliza insisted on keeping in her room. Eliza spoke only once after James vanished. At dinner, unprompted, she looked up from her untouched plate and said, "He forgot, so she took him back." Helen dropped her fork. "Who, sweetie?" Eliza smiled. "My name. It's not Eliza. Never was. You'll forget too." Helen called the caseworker the next morning, demanding answers. But by then the agency's contact info had changed. The office was shut down. No one knew who placed Eliza with them. The paper trail had vanished. Just like James. Meanwhile, in room 217 of the psychiatric hospital, something stirred in Amara. One rainy night, as lightning slashed the sky, Amara sat up for the first time in weeks. Her body moved like it had remembered how to be alive again. Her mouth opened slowly, and from her lips came a single name. Not spoken, but whispered. The room darkened. The padded walls pulsed like lungs. And the nurses who rushed to restrain her swore her eyes had turned pitch black for 3 seconds. 3 seconds exactly. Afterwards she fell limp. Her pulse was steady. But the security footage was erased. All of it. Even from the backups. Helen, desperate and unraveling, called in a local priest. Not from the church. Not from any organized religion. A man who worked in secrets. A man whose name was passed around in hushed tones. Father Elias. He arrived without introduction, with a black coat, a leather satchel, and eyes like burnt wood. "I need to see the girl," he said. "Alone." Helen hesitated. "She's just a child." "No," Elias replied. "She isn't." Upstairs, Eliza sat in her room, humming tunelessly. The mirror beside her shimmered faintly, though the room was still. Father Elias sat across from her, opened his satchel, and produced a small wooden box. He opened it. Inside was a name, carved into bone. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Eliza looked at it, and for the first time her face changed. The smile dropped. The room temperature plunged. She spoke without opening her mouth. "That was mine before they buried it." Elias nodded. "It's still yours. But it's also locked." He hissed. "You can't keep it from me," she said. "She gave it to me once. All it takes is a whisper. Slip of memory. A dream. You can't hold back forever." Elias began chanting. The mirror cracked. Eliza shrieked, not like a child, but like a hurricane being funneled through a throat. Her mouth opened wider than humanly possible. From her body leaked black smoke, something ancient, crawling, furious. But Elias didn't stop. He thrust the bone-carved name into the smoke, and it howled. not in pain but in hunger. Then everything went still. Eliza slumped forward, unconscious. The mirror shattered. And Elias looked up, eyes wide. "It didn't work," he whispered. That night, Helen dreamed for the first time in years. She was back in her own childhood home. Alone. But there was crying in the basement. Baby wailing. She opened the basement door and walked down the stairs. At the bottom, in a crib carved from stone, lay Eliza. But when she got closer, the baby's face changed. It was her own. Burned. Twisted. And above the crib, written in blood, "If you love her, say her name." Helen woke screaming. When she rushed to Eliza's room, she found the child standing on her bed, arms outstretched toward the cracked mirror. "I know you know it now," Eliza said softly. "It's right there on the tip of your tongue. Say it, and I'll let you see James again." Helen wept. She wanted to say it. She almost did. But instead she whispered, "You're not my child." Eliza turned. The smile was gone. She was. "Before you forgot." Then Helen collapsed. Across town in the hospital, Amara opened her eyes once more. The fog had lifted. She didn't know how or why, but she remembered everything. Curse, cradle, price. And one thought repeated over and over in her mind like a drumbeat. I never should have changed her name. The rain wouldn't stop. It pelted the windows of the psychiatric hospital in waves, streaking the glass like tears sliding down a cheek. Inside room 217, Amara sat upright now, no longer vacant-eyed, no longer lost. She remembered everything. The birth, name, the mistake, and the curse that had waited in the silence of forgotten syllables. The doctors were baffled. They called it a miracle, a neurological anomaly, spontaneous recovery. But Amara didn't care what name they gave it. She knew the truth. The entity had moved on to someone else, and that meant she still had time. In the foster home, Helen sat at the kitchen table, staring at a name she had written in the condensation on her teacup without realizing it. Lilith. She gasped and wiped it away. But it was too late. From the baby monitor came a long, low hiss. Then laughter, childish and mocking, but layered with something deeper. A voice ancient and dry, slithering through static. You remembered me. Helen rushed upstairs. The hallway light flickered. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and burnt sugar. Eliza sat at the foot of her bed, clutching a broken shard of her mirror. She was humming. I didn't mean to say it, Helen whispered. I didn't mean to remember. It doesn't matter now, Eliza replied, eyes glowing. You're part of the story again. Helen turned to run. But the walls folded inward. The hallway stretched impossibly long. From the other end came footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Not Eliza's. Not James's. Something else. Helen screamed. And the house swallowed her. Amara stood at the gates of the ruined church, soaked and shivering. The altar was gone, burned to ash, but she wasn't here for salvation. She was here for what was buried beneath. She pulled away vines and moss until she found it, the hidden trapdoor under the stone floor. Her hands bled as she forced it open, revealing stairs that spiraled into the earth. At the bottom, candles lit themselves. Bones lined the walls like ivy. Symbols carved into the rock glowed faintly, pulsing with her heartbeat. And in the center of the chamber sat the cradle. The original one. Built from black wood and ash. Empty now but not silent. It vibrated as if humming. She stepped forward and the voice spoke again. You can still give her back to me. Amara swallowed. No. Then I'll take the next one. And the next. As long as they forget, I'll never die. Amara knelt before the cradle. You want your name. Silence. Yes. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the bone-carved plaque Father Elias had used. The one inscribed with Lilith. She placed it in the cradle. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Amara whispered. You fed on fear, on silence, on forgetting. But I remember now. The walls began to shake. The bones on the walls cracked. No. You can't give it back. You already gave it away. That's not how this ends. But it is, Amara said, holding up the second plaque. The one she carved herself. The one that read Eliza. I name her Eliza. I name her again. I choose. I choose. A blinding light exploded from the cradle. The chamber screamed, a sound of hundreds of voices shrieking in unison. The walls collapsed inward, the ground split, and black smoke coiled upward, reaching for Amara. But the names pulsed with light. And for the first time the voice sounded afraid. No, not again, don't bury me, don't. The earth swallowed the cradle. Then the smoke. Then the voice. And it was done. Helen was found wandering the edge of the forest 3 days later. Disoriented. Mud-covered. But alive. Eliza was gone. No trace of her ever living in the house remained. Not in the paperwork, not in the neighborhood's memory, not even in Helen's own phone. Like she had been erased. But one name lingered. Burned into Helen's front door. Remember. Back at the hospital, Amara sat in the courtyard garden. The rain had finally stopped. A nurse approached gently. You have a visitor. A turn. It was a man she didn't recognize. Middle-aged, kind eyes. I'm Elias's brother, he said. He left you this before he disappeared. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a note. If they speak her name, she returns. If they forget, she waits. If they remember and choose another, she sleeps. You made the right choice. For now. But she's patient. She has nothing but time. Amara looked up at the sky. And in the clouds, for a fleeting second, she thought she saw a cradle swinging gently. Me. Waiting.